Hi, I'm Brady Volin with the Lobby Observer. Last weekend, I was able to catch up with Jared Carrabis. Jared is a Barstool writer and Red Sox enthusiast. Jared was nice enough to sit down with me and answer a few questions about his writing career. So, just to start off, thank you so much for joining us today,
Of
Jared.
course, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. So, my first question: when did you decide that you wanted to be this type of like baseball reporter?
I started my blog when I was 16. How old are you?
Also 16.
Yeah, so I was your age when I started. But like back then, we're talking 2006. So how old were you in 2006?
Two.
So back then, yeah, if you wanted a job writing about sports for like a career, there weren't many avenues that you could do that. It was newspapers and magazines. Barstool existed, but it wasn't a career path. It was more just, we read Barstool because it was funny and Dave was on there and everything else, but it wasn't a place at that time that you could go for a career. So I kind of started writing like I was in the press box, even though I wasn't. It wasn't really until like 2013 that I stopped caring about sounding like I was like a newspaper writer. And I kind of just started writing the way that I talked out loud to my friends about baseball. And that's when you just saw like it was a huge blast off from there. And it was also kind of around the same time that Barstool started blowing up. It was right place, right time for me that, I had known Dave since 2011. But Barstool wasn't quite ready to be hiring people full time just to write about one sport or one team or whatever. So yeah, by the time they were ready, I was ready, and it just kind of worked out that way.
That's amazing. So how did you like join Barstool? What did that like process kind of look like?
uh, so I definitely get asked either, people that, like yourself that are trying to get into the industry, and it's like, well, what was your path like? And I tell it as a funny story. It's not advice. Like you can't get to Barstool the way that I got to Barstool. Like it's just not possible. So I started my blog on MySpace, and you're probably so young that you've never even had a MySpace before.
Yeah, I have not.
Yeah. So like MySpace was a thing for a hot second. So I started my blog on there, and then I got like an eventual actual website, and then I met Dave at the Sports Blog Awards in 2011. He was the host, and I won like best Red Sox blog, and then I won best overall New England sports blog. And when I won that one, I just went up there and was like, I don't know why I won this, because like Barstool should have won this. And Dave was like, oh, okay, cool. So we kind of kept in touch ever since then. And in 2014, I think it was the game that David Price threw at David Ortiz, and it was that
Okay.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was on the field before the game, and I was dating this girl at the time that's very attractive, and they showed her on TV because she was down on the field, like taking pictures of me when I was on the field, and they ended up putting her on Nesson. So then people took pictures of their TVs and sent it to Barstool, and they were like, hey, like check out this hot girl at Fenway. And then Feidelberg ended up blogging the picture of her, and then that turned into people tweeting at Feidelberg being like, hey, that's Carrabis's girlfriend. So then Feidelberg followed me, saw that I was a Red Sox blogger, and then we started talking, and then next thing you know, I'm the Red Sox blogger at Barstool, because I had already known Dave. Feidelberg checked out my stuff. Feidelberg and Dave started talking, being like, this is the guy that we should bring on to be our Red Sox guy. And Dave basically was like, I would have asked you sooner, but I thought that you were happy doing your own thing. And I was like, yeah, I definitely like doing my own thing, but if it's the difference between playing in the KBO and the MLB. It's like, yeah, I'm doing okay in the KBO, but if I have a chance to come to Major League Baseball, yes, I would like to play Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened.
That's just Right place, right time. Just exactly
Yeah.
what you said.
Right.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about your podcast. So how did, like, obviously starting 9 with former MLB pitcher Dallas Braden and also
Mhm.
Section 10, like how did you get those off the ground and started?
So Section 10 is actually the second Barstool Sports podcast ever. It was KFC Radio first, and then Section 10. And so I worked at this T-shirt printing company, and it's mindless work. I mean, you're folding T-shirts, you're looking at the order, you're going to the shelf, you're pulling off the shirts off the shelf and packaging stuff and whatever. So I would listen to podcasts like at that job all day, every day. And I would listen to KFC Radio, and they did like the voicemails, which I always thought was cool. Like they would have listeners, the listeners would call into the voicemails. And when we first started Section 10, that was something that we did, where it was like we had the voicemail line where people would call in and just like, I mean, we started the podcast in 2015 and they were in last place that year.
Yeah.
So people would call in and just lose their minds on like the voicemail and talking about how much the Red Sox sucked. It was funny. But then I also listened to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. And what I loved about that was that at the time, like if you heard like wrestlers doing interviews, they were doing interviews as their character. And then they would come on with Stone Cold and it's like, it's the person behind the character. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, I feel like that would be even like if I took that idea and brought it to like a Red Sox podcast, like when we first started, we had like a bunch of like Boston sports media people on, and like you're humanizing these people that, you know, if you're a Boston sports fan, you're listening to the radio and you're like, I hate Felger. And then you listen to the podcast and you're like, you're making it really hard to hate this guy. Like he is a normal, good guy behind the radio kingpin troll that he is. So yeah, like that's kind of where it started was Pete Blackburn and myself. Like Pete wanted to do like a men's lifestyle podcast. And I was like, well, like a lot of people follow me on Twitter and they're Red Sox fans. So what if it's like a men's lifestyle podcast where we also talk about the Red Sox? He was like, that could work. Cause there's other Red Sox podcasts out there where they're talking names and numbers. And it's like, how interesting is that versus like, we're just messing around. We're all Red Sox fans and we're going to talk about the Red Sox, but we're going to do it in a way that like there's a microphone in the room with like 3 friends hanging out, just talking, versus like a polished Red Sox show. So that's where it started. And then when I moved to New York, Dave was like, he was like, what do you want to do with Section 10? Because I know what I want to do with it. And I was like, well, what do you want to do with it, Dave? And he was like, cancel it. And I was like, no. I was like, if you cancel it, I'm done. Like I'm not, like that's not happening. So he's like, well, we need a national MLB podcast. And I was like, crazy idea. I can do both. Like there's no reason why I can't do both.
Yeah.
So, well, he's like, well, who do you want? And Dallas had just got let go from ESPN. So I brought Dallas on Section 10 as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically his starting 9 tryout without him knowing that it was his starting 9 tryout. Like I had just reached out and been like, hey, like, you know, I'm a big fan, want you to come on my podcast. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And like I told Steve, I don't think Coley was on yet. It was still Pete at that time. But I told them like, hey, like hang back in this interview. Like just let me go one-on-one with him because like we're checking chemistry basically. So yeah, I mean like that was his tryout and I came back to Dave and I was like, this is the guy. And we made things happen and now we've been together for 17, 18, 19, 20. We're going on our 5th season.
Wow. So, that's pretty quick. It seemed like that came up pretty quick, honestly.
Yeah.
So do you have like any favorite, I know like there's been so much, whether it's been like your rock, paper, scissors or just any interview that you've had with a player that really stands out to you?
Definitely the Bryce Harper interview because that was a big fish. That dude, he doesn't do stuff like that. So, I mean, there's definitely been players that I've interviewed where I'm like, oh my God, like this is awesome. Like Cal Ripken Jr., perfect example. Like I grew up a Cal Ripken Jr. fan. my instant messenger screen name back in the day was C Ripken 2131X8. So I was like, that was my guy. And I got to interview him twice. And like the second time that he came back, he remembered my name. And I was like, oh my God, like Cal Ripken knows my name. So that one's special to me. But for the podcast, Bryce Harper doesn't do interviews. Like he just doesn't. Like he'll do like post game stuff, but he won't do like the like expansive, like let's talk about everything type deal. And that's what he did with us. And it was 2 hours, and it worked out that way because of COVID. We were supposed to go down to Florida, and we were supposed to interview him, and that would have been like a half an hour if we did that at spring training camp. But because it was over Zoom, because everyone was just sitting around waiting for spring training to start back up again, we got him for 2 hours, and he covered every angle of his baseball life. And it was probably our most downloaded podcast ever. So yeah, that was a special one.
Wow. That's just crazy.
Mm.
So I've also seen, your love for Alex Cora. I got to ask, did that originate just because he won the 2018 World Series with us, or was it just something more than that?
So Alex and I, we used to tweet at each other back in the day, like 2014, 2015. Like we got into it over Rusney Castillo. Cause I think like I was probably like trashing Rusney Castillo, and I think Alex might've been managing him in winter ball. So he was trying to like defend his guy. Mm-hmm. So we would go back and forth on that. And then it turned into like, he like DM'd me, and like we exchanged phone numbers, and like we kind of just like kept in touch or whatever. And then after Farrell got fired, I heard Alex's name come up, and I was like, this would be awesome. like the manager of the Red Sox is someone that I like kind of know a little bit. And so he got hired, and then a week after he got hired, he came on starting nine. On starting nine because he had known Dallas and Jay Hay from ESPN. So that's how he got him so fast. And after the interview, I texted him and I was like, hey, would you mind like over the course of this, like the season, if I have any questions, like, can I reach out to you directly? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then that turned into like, I mean, we talked after every single game.
Oh, wow.
Like like he would like see my tweets. Like if I was freaking out about something, he would text me and be like, hey brother, like, don't worry about it. Like we got this, like we're going to be world champs. And so like I basically had my own one-on-one press conference with Alex after just about every single game. Like I knew that there were some games where I was like, all right, I'm going to stay. But that was the thing. I tried to have a feel with him.
Yeah.
There would be some nights where it's like 13 innings, like they battled, but then they lost. And it's like, well, I'm not about to text this dude after like a tough loss like that.
Yeah.
And if I didn't reach out to him, he would reach out to me. Wow. And like, he would start the conversation. Like I remember after the 18 inning loss in the World Series, I was like, I am not texting him. Nope. I was like, first of all, it's the World Series. Like he's locked in. Second of all, you just played a double header and lost.
Muncie.
Yeah. And then I remember he reached out. He was like, don't worry about it. Like, we got this. And he's like, everyone's freaking out because we used Evaldi. Evaldi was supposed to be their game 4 starter. And he's like, yeah, like we got a lefty that throws like 96, and no, why isn't anyone talking about that? And so like he would go out of his way to like talk me off a ledge.
Yeah.
Multiple times over the course of that season. So, yeah, like that's why he's the best. Like who else is doing that? Nobody is taking the time to be like, hey, like this guy has a voice with our fan base. And if I keep his head on straight, then I keep many people's head on straight. Yeah. So like if he's freaking out, then like other people are going to be freaking out. So yeah, it's a very special relationship.
So obviously that's definitely going to help us this year. I mean, it was just an abysmal season last year. What do you think the Red Sox have to do to get back to, I mean, at least the playoffs, obviously. I think the World Series is definitely out of reach, like no question about it. But what do you think they have to do?
Pitching. I mean, you need you need to go get starters. And there's plenty of like you're not what you need to do is like Rich Hill's out there, Jake Odorizzi. I mean, it would have been nice to have a guy like Charlie Morton, but like that's the tier of pitcher that you're looking at. So it's like you have Eddie, you have Evaldi, you might have Pivetta. Like you've got guys, but you don't have Chris Sale. Like you don't have an ace. So I think they kind of just have to like hang in there until Sale comes back.
Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can be like around 500 by the time Sale comes back, but like, you know, you like Heimblum said this, he's like, you know, we can't depend on Chris Sale. Like it'll be nice to have him, but we can't bank on him being there and being this dominant ace straight off of Tommy John. So it's going to be guys like that. Like they're going to need depth and they're going to need guys that can just give you innings. And I think they can sort of fill out this almost slightly above mediocre rotation and be okay with that because the offense is so good.
Yeah.
Then you have questions with the bullpen where it's like, you know, who's closing out games for you?
Yeah.
They don't have a closer right now. Like they have back end of the bullpen guys. They don't have a closer. So yeah, I feel like right now is where Chaim Bloom needs to do what Chaim Bloom does, and that's identify those random pieces where, you know, you've got guys like no one knew who Pete Fairbanks was before last year. But it's like they find him randomly. I think he was with the Rangers, and now he's in the back end of the Rays bullpen throwing 101 miles an hour. Like they didn't have to give up a whole lot to get Pete Fairbanks. They were kind of just like, yeah, sure, we'll take him. And then boom, now you have a back end of the bullpen guy. But that's how you do it. I mean, you buy a bunch of lottery tickets and hope that you hit on a couple of them, and that's all you need to do. I mean, if you buy 20 lottery tickets and you hit on 2, well, guess what? You just got a closer and a setup man for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, I mean, I don't want to put any Andrew Benintendi slander up, but what do you think his fit on this team is now? Like, obviously after that last season, you know, did not look too good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm throwing that season out. You know, like I think if you're gonna throw it out for some people, you have to throw it out for everybody. And like I'm throwing it out for JD, like I'm throwing it out for Christian Yelich and Javi Baez and Chris Bryant, like guys like that, where it's like, you know, they're good. Like, and you have you have a small sample because of the abbreviated season, and then it's even smaller when you factor in like the injury. I mean, it was terrible. Don't get me wrong; like, it was absolutely brutal. But over the course of 162, it's probably like 10% of a season, maybe. So yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that people have said, you know, we've already seen the best of Andrew Benintendi at the major league level, and that might be true, but that doesn't mean that he's god awful. Like I don't believe that at all. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big year for him. I think he has a lot to prove. I don't think that he's one of those guys where it's like, yeah, look at the back of my baseball card and like you'll see what type of player I am. I think we still don't know what he's entirely capable of. He could be one of those guys where it's like, hey, you actually haven't seen the best of me yet.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and see what happens next year. I'm not going into 2021 with a pessimistic approach to what to expect from Benintendi.
Okay. Yeah. Also, you were talking about earlier your spring training trips. So, like, you didn't get to go to Florida because of COVID, but I actually was with my dad at the Padres camp, and we saw your bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, do you have any memories from that specifically that also stand out to you?
Padres camp is when I hit that home run off the roof.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good time. Yeah, I mean, like those trips, it's like, it's such a grind because, I mean, you're waking up at like 6 a.m. on the bus at 7 a.m. and then you get back to your hotel at midnight and then you just do it all over again. Like there's no time to, like, I have a bunch of friends that live in Arizona and I never see them when we're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love being able to connect with them. And I feel like as much as the Zoom interviews have been great and everyone has time to give you because they're sitting around and you're easily connected over Zoom and everything, there's just something about interviewing someone in person that you just can't explain. Like you just make a personal connection versus like you hop on a Zoom and you answer the questions, but it's like, it's that, I guess, like camaraderie after the fact. Like some of the best stuff that, like stories that I heard were off camera. And it's like, that's how you can tell that they're comfortable with you and they trust you is if they're just like opening up to you regardless of whether or not it's an interview or not. But yeah, I mean, like I remember this past spring we did we like hung out at the house that like the Indians pitchers were renting and like we had dinner with them. Like we sat down, it was like me, Beebs, Dallas, Clev, Plezak, I can't remember who else was there, but I mean, it was basically like the Indians rotation. It's like, those guys are so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did like the laser tag with the A's last year. And then we did like the go-karts with the A's guys. We went golfing with Whit Merrifield.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like we've done a lot of cool stuff like when we go down to spring training, but I mean, oh yeah, we went to Top Golf with Mike Yastrzemski and Evan Longoria. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I enjoy it a lot.
That's crazy. And wait, were you on the Bauer bites?
Yeah.
You saw that. So was that during spring training as well?
Yeah, that was yeah, we had to set aside time for that during like the tour, and we went, he had like the Momentum House and we went there, and it was me, Bauer, Dallas, Bieber, and Alex Wood.
Oh, right. That's who the other one was. That was really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was let's see how many we had. 2 World Series rings, 1 Cy Young Award, 1 perfect game. No, 2 Cy Young Awards.
Yeah.
2 Cy Youngs, 2 World Series rings, and 1 perfect game sitting at that table.
Yeah. That's amazing. I can't that. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. Well, at this point, I think just because the vlogs, Trevor Bauer is my favorite player. Like, not on the Red Sox, obviously, but like, there's nothing I've never seen somebody like behind the scenes like that. So I don't know. I think he's definitely like he's saying, like making baseball like popular again. I think he's definitely doing that. He can, at least.
Right. He cares. Like he cares about that type of stuff. And that's why I love him. I mean, I know that he's polarizing, and then there's some people that strongly dislike him, but then I feel like he's in the last year has turned a lot of those people. Like a lot of the people that were like, I don't like this guy, are like, you know what? This guy's making a lot of sense. I mean, it helps when you win a Cy Young Award too, because there's that element of, you know, the people that flap their gums and then go out there and post like a 5 ERA, that it's much different than people that go out there and talk trash and then win a Cy Young Award. So you have to respect it, whether or not you like him. You have to respect the fact that he cares to put in the time and effort to grow the game on top of putting in a crazy amount of work to become the elite pitcher that he is. Like the stuff with him behind the scenes is like, you look at him and be like, you're a crazy person, but you can't call him crazy because it works. Like he's got the trophy case to back it up now.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness.
Yep.
All right. So my last question for you, thank you again so much for your time. What not on the Red Sox, who do you think your just favorite player is in general, either to watch, or it doesn't even have to be like a relationship you had, just most entertaining player you got to watch? It could be through your whole career too, not just nowadays.
Man,
broad question.
I would say, like, I mean, Manny was my favorite hitter to watch ever. I can sit there and watch highlights of Manny hitting for 10 hours, and I have. There's been off seasons at the old Barstool office. It would be like December and I'm just missing baseball, and then I would fire up like a highlight reel of Manny hitting homers and just sit there and watch him hit homers in the office. So I've done that. And then as far as like active, You know, I I I rarely. This is obviously not active, but
Yeah.
I rarely ever missed a Jose Fernandez start.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was my guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like so 2016, the year that he died was my first year covering the whole league.
Mm-hmm.
Um like yeah, going from just Red Sox to all MLB, that
Yeah.
was my first year. So I don't think I missed a start of his that year. Um so yeah, Jose Fernandez for me was like the guy to
Mm-hmm.
watch. Um and then now, man, I love watching Nolan Arenado.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just he'll make the most ridiculous defensive plays,
Yeah.
and like your brain tells you, like, oh my God, that was a crazy play. But like at the same time, my brain's also like, yeah, but it's Nolan. Like, that's just
Yeah.
what he does. Like,
What are your thoughts on his, the rumors to the Dodgers? Anything about that?
I mean, that would just be unfair.
I just don't know how that would even. That would look like a fantasy team, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd have Cody Bellinger and Nolan Arenado, Mookie Betts in the middle of your order. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
not great for opposing pitchers.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, like I love watching Yelly. Like I
Mhm.
just get like I get an extra level of excitement watching guys that I know are good people
Mhm.
succeed at that level. And then there's just like that extra layer of like sadness when they're not doing well, and like you wanna like let them know that you're there for them as a friend when
Mhm.
things aren't going well, because I think there's probably nothing shittier for them as athletes when like they're doing really well,
Yeah.
and like you know your phone's blowing up and everyone's your boy, and
Yeah.
then you have a year where things maybe aren't going so well and you don't hear from them anymore. Like I think that
Yeah.
that's shitty. So I like to let my guys know, like, hey man, like I'm checking in like to see how you're doing,
Yeah.
like mentally, like if things aren't going well. And I know some guys want to be left alone, so you
Mhm.
have to figure out, like, it's a weird thing to navigate. But yeah, no, it's a weird existence for me, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jared. It's
Of course.
just been amazing. Obviously, if anybody watching hasn't, go follow Jared on all the
Mm.
socials. Obviously, starting 9 and section 10. Watch those podcasts; they're great.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. Signing off from the Lobby Observer. Thank you again, Jared, for your time. Hopefully soon I will also have the opportunity to talk to Alex Cora after a few games. Thank you again. I'm Brady Volin with the Lobby Observer, signing off.